Okay, welcome everyone to another video about competitive fellowships, applying as a J visa resident, and what are the implications for that. In today's video panel, we have Arvind with me. Arvind, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Karthik. My name is Arvind. I'm a third-year internal medicine resident doing my residency in Medical City, Fort Worth in Texas. I am going to be applying for Hematology Oncology Fellowship starting 2021 July. Right now, I have a one-year geriatric fellowship, which I'm going to be doing from July 2020 to June 2021 at UT Houston. And yeah, that's about my background right now.
All right. So Arvind came up with some questions regarding applying for a competitive fellowship. He's applying for hematology oncology, which is one of the competitive fellowships for internal medicine residents. What implications are there with regards to the fellowship match and the job opportunities if that one does not match in fellowship. So go ahead, start with the first question.
Right. So my first question is going to be, as I'm applying for a competitive fellowship, can I also apply for a J1 waiver as a backup option?
So yes, you can apply for a waiver as well. It depends on the timeline. Most medicine fellowships go through the NRMP match, and so does pediatric fellowship matches, are all moved to November, December release cycle. So the results will be out maybe end of November, early December. This is a strain on people who are doing J1 and H1 visas because you have very few months to figure out a job in case you apply to a competitive fellowship and your CV is not strong enough, or you feel like you needed some more backup when you apply for these fellowships. So most states open their Contract 30 program around September or October, and they pretty much close their application cycle by end of November. So you will miss out on pretty much most of the states that have those timelines and are competitive because they pretty much fill their 30 spots by end of November. And if you get your NRMP results December 1st week, by then most states are already closed up. So what options do you have at that point? So you can apply for a job, you can interview for fellowship, and also for a job. If you're a third-year internal medicine resident, you can interview for a hospitalist or primary care job. You can sign the contract, and they can also submit to the state health department. Your health department application can be canceled at that point as long as your application has not been forwarded to the Department of State. So you can, if you did match an NRMP, you call your employer and let them know that I matched in a fellowship, so unfortunately I won't be able to take the job. Obviously, this has a lot of implications. One being that you already signed a contract that you're going to join there. And if they paid for the attorney fees and so forth, you will be liable for that. You have to pay those fees back. Also, any other punitive fees that they may ask you. This is a touchy subject. You can't talk to them when you're interviewing for a job that I'm also applying for fellowship and this is my backup. With the waiver application, you already signed a contract. To pull out of a contract does break a lot of ties. You are basically pulling a contract out of a place that you said you were going to join, and they might have had other candidates who might have been willing to come, but they signed you. It is usually not the best conversation if that happens. So unless you have a strong reasons to do that, I wouldn't suggest going that pathway. But if you have a strong backup job option that's located in a Delta regional, and you have a feeling that they won't fill out easily, I would wait until the fellowship results and then sign the contract and proceed. Thereby the process is sooner, so you won't be breaking any ties at that point, versus submitting something early and their process goes faster some year out of ordinary, and you won't have a reason to pull out your application just like that. Say you submitted in September and it got approved in October, and they say they're going to forward to the Department of State in November, and you still are waiting for your fellowship results. It's gonna create a very uneasy situation. So I wouldn't recommend that.
So if you sign the waiver with the Contract 30 program, or if you sign a waiver with the Delta Regional or the Appalachian Regional Commission, what are the things that we have to look out for? Now, I remember you saying about a 250 clause. So is that something that factors in?
Yeah. So for Delta Regional Authority and Appalachian Regional Commission, there's a $250,000 penalty if they approve a waiver and you did not complete the 3-year waiver. Same with some states like Alabama. Contract 30 also has that clause. So you have to go through the document for that particular state and make sure they don't have a punitive damage clause. So let's say you applied for a job in Memphis, Tennessee that falls under Delta Regional in August, and they approve the job in October or November, and you say you're going to pull out your job application in December, you could be potentially liable for all the damages from the agency because you signed a contract with the clause that there's $250,000 penalty. One way of looking is you never started the job. Maybe that might give you a little bit of buffer there, but there's probably not going to be a lot of examples of people who had that situation. So it's hard to tell. Unless you are in that situation, you might still be liable for a huge amount of penalty. So as a resident, I will try to avoid Delta Regional or Appalachian Regional Commission or states that have punitive damage penalties when you're submitting your waiver application before you get your fellowship results. That might still be an option after you submit your, after your fellowship results are out and you did not match, you can probably still submit at that point, but probably not before you get your results.
But the problem is after the fellowship match, if unfortunately we did not match, when we go back to the DRC or the Appalachian Regional Commission, the same jobs will still not be available, right? I mean, because people might have already applied a lot earlier and they might have actually gotten the jobs.
It is a risk. And again, there's no guarantee with any job that you interview in August is still going to be open in December. So it's a rolling cycle. So you still have to keep looking for jobs as a backup option. If that is a concern for you, again, there's no guarantee that a job that you interviewed in July or August is still going to be available in December.
As a third-year resident, if you find out after match that you have not matched, what are the options apart from doing a waiver?
So if you're still passionate about the specialty that you applied, I would strongly suggest you consider taking a one-year fellowship in the same field that you applied. For cardiology, there's the option of heart failure. For GI, there's the option of doing a hepatology or nutrition fellowship. For HEMONC, there's the option of doing palliative care or geriatrics, or also bone marrow transplant. Likewise, each of the specialty might have one-year fellowship options. Some of them will be non-accredited, but that's still okay. So that will give you some extra time for you to strengthen your CV and apply next July. When you start that fellowship, you'll still be applying in July, and hopefully you'll match the next year. But it's still a risk because that same situation can happen when you're doing that one-year fellowship. In December of that year, if you find out you've still been matched, at that time you will still go back to whether I should do my waiver or what should I do. What I can tell from experience is for competitive fellowships, if you take a break in your training, it's always going to be a negative, especially those countries who have a backlog in a green card and who won't get their green card when they finish their waiver. So they are going to be needing H-1B visas for fellowship, and that's going to be a problem. So if you are someone from India or China and you are considering applying for a competitive fellowship, I would suggest just do one-year fellowship and reapply the next year. If you are from any other country, probably find an academic waiver job, strengthen your CV, also side-by-side work on getting your green card so you won't have that limitation when you apply for fellowships after you finish your waiver. But overall, the general notion is that if you apply for a competitive fellowship, you should ideally not have any breaks in training.
Okay, just to be clear, this one-year fellowship can be applied even after you find out that you're not matched, basically in the post-match time, right?
A lot of times that's where it happens. But there are some you can even apply along with your specialty and maybe rank it lower. But most of the time, these one-year fellowship options are filled right after the fellowship results. I can talk about GI because I applied for GI. So all the hepatology positions open up right after the match results, and that's when they start getting applications. There's no NRMP, it's a pre-match offer. So you will interview on a rolling basis. If they like the candidate, they'll just hire. So likewise, it should be the same for a lot of one-year fellowships. You can also go back to see some of the open fellowship spots from the NRMP results. If you did not match, you should get a document with those places that do not fill. And you can target and apply to one of those locations that you want to, eventually do your competitive fellowship. So you will have developed contacts within the program when you apply for fellowship the next year.
Okay. No. So is there a way that we know when it will reach the Department of State? Because I mean, when we apply for the waiver, right, we go for the interview, we sign the contract, but how do we know when it reaches the Department of State? So
you have to go through the state health department, see what's the time frame for the waiver application for that particular state, and know when they usually process their applications. I can talk about Kansas, so they start their application cycle from September 1 to November 30. They usually tell the results by December 15th, but they don't forward the application till February of next year. So you have a lot of time window versus some other states or do it very, very quickly. Like Kentucky forwards their application way faster. So the only way you will know is one, review the state waiver health department's document as to what is their process. Call the coordinator for that state and ask them what's the timeline usually about when your applications usually go to Department of State. Word of caution would be this year, because of COVID, a lot of states had delay in those process. So this year is, I would say, an anomaly. But if you go back to 2018, 2019, or years before, you can get a sense of when the application gets forwarded to Department of State. Okay.
All right. The next question was going to be, so the NRMP match results come out in December, during the last year of our training, but the waiver for most states get submitted during September or October. So is it worth waiting till December to sign and apply for the waiver?
You can apply for waiver anytime before you finish your training, but your options will be limited the longer you wait. As I said, most states will close their Conduct 30 program by November, end of November. So if they already get 30 applications, they're not going to be entertaining more applications for that year. Your options pretty much at that time would be states that you do not fill their Conduct 30 spots usually, and then Delta Regional Waiver, which has no cap and no timeline, Appalachian Regional Commission, which has no cap and no timeline, and Department of HHS Pathway, which has no timeline, and also VA jobs. So there's still quite a bit of jobs, pathways that are there. Whether you will have an actual job opening that late into the year will be something of the question. But typically waiver jobs are located in places that are difficult to hire. I started my job search for 2 years back, and I can still see some of those job sites have still not filled. So those jobs are not going to be filling within the first few months of, when you start your job search. So those should still be available, but the only limitation would be they have to be located in an area where one of the other agencies like Appalachian or Delta Regional covers, or should be in a very non-competitive state that usually does not fill their Conduct 30 spots.
Okay, all right. Next question was going to be, but I think we've already answered that. I mean, if the waiver has already been submitted and then we match into a fellowship, but what will be the next step?
So if you match in waiver fellowship, remember NRMP agreement is non-binding. It is binding. I'm sorry. So you can pull out of an NRMP match after you matched, and you can't say I didn't like this program and I matched here. I matched in my choice 8 and I don't like it. I like my job better because it's located in a better city. You can't say that because NRMP has an agreement that's binding. At that point, your only option would be to pull your waiver application, and we went through the steps on that for question 1 about how you can do that.
Okay. All right.
All right. Hopefully that answers your question, Arvind, and yes. Hopefully this benefits other people who are in a similar situation as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you. See you.